Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Last week, I took my sister and her two kids to Disney World. I've been planning it for months, saving up from my extra shifts at the hospital where I work as a nurse. My sister works two jobs to make ends meet since her divorce last year, and I wanted to treat my niece and nephew to something special. My nephew is 6 and my niece is 9, and this was their first time at any major theme park. We waited in line for the princess meet and greet for about 45 minutes. It was hot in Florida, reaching nearly 95 degrees that afternoon. The line moved slowly, a few steps every 5 minutes, snaking through a themed courtyard. The kids were getting antsy, but nothing unusual. My nephew counted tiles on the ground. My niece played I Spy with another kid in line. Everyone was trying to keep their kids entertained while waiting. My sister had packed water bottles and small snacks, which helped tremendously. Then it happened. This woman walked past everyone, pulling her son by the hand. She didn't try to be subtle. She just walked past all of us and stood about 3 families ahead. She had a determined look on her face, as if this was completely normal behavior. People started murmuring. An older couple exchanged looks, and a teenager nearby took out an earbud in disbelief. The dad behind where she cut in tapped her shoulder and told her the line started back there. He was polite but direct, pointing to the back of the line. She turned around looking annoyed. She said her son had sensory issues and she wasn't going to subject him to this environment. She added that we didn't know how to parent. Her voice carried down the line, causing several parents to look up from their phones. I looked at my sister, who raised her eyebrows. My sister had worked with special needs children as a teacher's aide before her current jobs. I asked the woman what she meant. She pointed at all the families in line. She said her son was too sensitive to be around poor parenting and she was doing what was best for her child. Her son, who looked about 7 or 8, was wearing regular clothes with no visible comfort items or noise-canceling headphones that many children with sensory issues use. Her son stared at the ground. He looked embarrassed and kept tugging at her arm, trying to whisper something to her. The dad looked around at the rest of us. He told her we all paid the same money. Her kid didn't get VIP access because she didn't like other people's toddlers. He mentioned that he had waited almost an hour already with his twin daughters. Several parents nodded. A woman with a baby strapped to her chest shook her head in disapproval. My sister suggested that Disney had accommodation services for sensory issues that could be arranged ahead of time. She mentioned the disability access service that Disney offers specifically for these situations. The woman turned away, putting her arm around her son. She told him some people weren't raised right. She acted as if we were all deliberately making her life difficult. My niece asked if that lady was saying they were bad. Her little face showed genuine concern that she had done something wrong. I told her not to worry about it. I explained that sometimes adults get frustrated and say things they don't mean. I was angry. My sister works hard to raise 2 good kids, and this stranger questioned her parenting. The mom in front of us went to get a cast member. She was wearing a birthday button and wasn't about to let this incident ruin her special day. The cast member came over and asked what was happening. She was young but handled the situation with professional poise. The woman talked about her son's special needs and how she needed accommodation. She raised her voice when explaining how long they had been at the park already. The cast member listened, then talked quietly with her. She pulled out a tablet to look up information about accommodations. The woman got more upset as they talked. She started mentioning how much their annual passes cost. I heard bits about proper channels and accessible queue options from the cast member, and something about how much she paid from the woman. The cast member showed her a pamphlet about Disney's official accommodation procedures. The cast member told her she needed to go to the end of the line. She offered to direct her to guest services for future accommodations. She explained that they could get a return time for attractions rather than waiting in the physical queue. The woman looked shocked. She said it was ridiculous that her son would have to wait with all these children. She gestured at a nearby group of preschoolers who were singing Disney songs. The cast member pointed out that This was a children's attraction at Disney World. She maintained her composure despite the woman's increasing hostility. The woman tried to argue more, but the cast member didn't change her mind. She threatened to speak to a manager and claimed to know someone who worked for the company. With huffs and eye rolls, she went to the back of the line, which was longer now. She made a show of checking her watch and sighing dramatically. As they walked past, people in line cheered. A father gave the cast member a thumbs up. The woman's face got red. She muttered something about ruining their vacation as she stormed past. My nephew asked why that lady tried to skip. He was watching the whole scene with wide eyes. I told him some people think rules don't apply to them. I used it as a teaching moment about fairness and patience. He said I always tell him to wait his turn. He reminded me about when we wait at the grocery store and post office back home. I said he was right. Everyone has to wait their turn. I gave him a high five for remembering that important lesson. We got to the front 20 minutes later. The princess was wonderful with the kids, spending extra time with my niece who was initially too shy to speak. We didn't see the woman and her son again. Later, while getting ice cream, we overheard another family mention she had tried the same tactic at the Splash Mountain ride. My niece and nephew had a great time meeting their favorite princess. They talked about it throughout dinner at the themed restaurant I'd reserved months ago. That's what mattered to me. The memory of my nephew's face lighting up when the princess remembered the name of his stuffed dragon was worth every extra shift I'd worked. Seeing that entitled attitude shut down was a bonus to our Disney day. My sister later told me it restored her faith in people standing up for what's right. Let me tell you about the time someone tried to climb my electric fence. I got my grandfather's property 3 years ago. It's 5 acres at the edge of town with an orchard and pond. It's next to a hiking trail, and over time hikers started cutting through as a shortcut. My grandfather didn't stop them, but after he died it got worse. People left trash, let dogs run on my land, and had picnics by my pond. I put up no trespassing signs, but nobody cared. One day I caught teenagers swimming and drinking beer in my pond. When I told them to leave, they laughed and said this had always been public land. That did it. I spent money on a 6-foot chain link fence with electric wiring. I put bright yellow signs every 20 feet saying, "Warning, electric fence, high voltage." The current isn't deadly but gives enough shock to keep people and animals away. I also set up cameras after some signs were torn down. Last Saturday, I was working near the fence when I heard voices from the trail. I ignored them until I heard rattling on the fence. I warned them it was electric and asked them not to touch it. I walked over and saw 3 women. 2 looked embarrassed while the third, in expensive hiking clothes, was shaking the fence. I turned off that section while working nearby. She complained about me fencing off the property. She mentioned people had been using the pond for years. I told her this was private property and the pond was in public. She said she'd hiked this trail for 15 years and people always cut through here. One friend suggested they follow the regular trail since it was only half a mile to the creek. The woman ignored her and pointed at my warning sign. She said the electric fence was just to scare people away and that it would be illegal. I told her it was legal when properly marked, which it was. I said the current was off while I worked, but I'd turn it back on when done. She said I was lying and claimed to know her rights, saying this was a public easement. I told her I had the property survey and deed, and there was no public easement. She said there should be one and claimed her tax dollars paid for my pond. I explained the pond was natural and on private property. I wasn't trying to be difficult, but trespassers damaged my property and left trash. Her second friend agreed with me and said they should respect my property and leave. The woman looked at the fence. She said she was going through and the fence was just for show. I asked her not to try it, warning that the fence would shock her once turned on. She said I was bluffing about the electricity. She walked along the fence looking for a climbing spot. I followed on my side. I told her I was going to the control box to turn on the electricity and asked her not to climb over. Her first friend said this wasn't worth the trouble and they should go around. The woman refused, telling her friends they could take the long way, but she wouldn't let a fake sign stop her from taking her shortcut. I went to the control panel near my shed and turned on that section. The warning lights lit up showing the fence was now live. I walked back hoping they had left. They hadn't. The friends stood back worried while the woman started climbing the fence. The second friend yelled at her to get down, reminding her I said it was electric. The woman said she worked in real estate for 20 years and knew homeowners say things to keep people off their property. She said rules didn't apply to her and mentioned how much her hiking outfit cost. She said she wouldn't walk extra distance and get sweaty. I shouted that the fence was now active. She told me to mind my own business and started saying this was a public park. She didn't finish. When her hand touched the top wire, there was a buzzing sound. Her body jerked backward, and she fell hard on the ground. She wasn't moving. Her first friend cried out. The second friend said she had warned her not to touch the fence. I ran to turn off the electricity, then hurried through a gate to their side. I asked if she was breathing. Her first friend said yes, but she was unconscious and called 911. Paramedics came quickly. They stabilized her before loading her into the ambulance. An EMT talked to me while they worked. He asked what happened. I explained everything, showed him the warning signs, and mentioned my security footage. He took notes. He asked if the fence was up to code. I said it was a standard agricultural electric fence, and I had all permits. He said many people don't do things properly. He said she should recover but might have burns on her hands. Police also came and took statements. The woman's friends were apologetic. The second friend said they tried to stop her. She said the woman always thinks rules don't apply to her. The first friend said the woman sued a restaurant last year for not giving her a table she wanted. The police checked my fence permits and signs and said everything was in order. I was within my rights to protect my property this way, and the signs were clear. They needed a copy of the security footage. I gave them the footage showing the woman ignoring warnings from me and her friends before climbing the fence. Later, I heard she spent 2 nights in hospital. No serious injuries, but she threatened to sue me in the emergency room. No lawsuit happened, probably because her friends would testify she ignored warnings and signs. Since then, no one has trespassed. Word got around about the fence incident. Back in 2006, I worked as a maintenance technician in a small office building. My job was to keep everything working properly. Air conditioning, plumbing, electricity, all that stuff. I handled small repairs myself and called specialists for bigger issues. The job paid okay, and the people were nice. The old manager knew maintenance problems don't follow a 9-to-5 schedule, so he was reasonable about overtime for emergencies. That changed when the company got bought by a larger corporation. They sent in a new boss to cut costs. He was tall and thin with expensive suits and a Bluetooth earpiece always in his ear. His first week he called a meeting. We crammed into the conference room while he showed his PowerPoint about efficiency. He told us that from now on, there would be no overtime allowed, no matter what. We looked at each other wondering if he was serious. In maintenance, sometimes you need to stay late. That's how it works. But he didn't care. He said any issues after hours could wait until the next business day. He said the company was losing money on overtime and he was stopping it. I raised my hand and tried to explain that sometimes emergencies can't wait, like water leaks or electrical problems. He cut me off and asked if he had stuttered. He repeated his policy and told me to plan my work better. We changed our schedules to check critical systems earlier in the day. For a few weeks, it worked okay, but I knew something would happen eventually. On a Friday around 4:30 p.m., I got an alert from the boiler room. The pressure in one of the main water pipes was too high. The monitoring system rarely gave false alarms. I went to the basement boiler room and heard the problem right away. One of the main water pipes was vibrating and making a screeching noise. The pressure gauge was in the red zone. If we didn't fix it soon, that pipe would burst. When a high-pressure pipe bursts, it's like a bomb. I went to the boss's office. He was packing his briefcase ready for the weekend. I told him about the emergency in the boiler room and the dangerous pressure levels. I said I needed 1 to 2 hours of overtime to fix it that night. He looked at his watch. It was 4:45 p.m. He said it was almost 5 and repeated his no overtime policy. We would handle it Monday. I warned him the pipe could burst over the weekend and cause major water damage. But he asked if I hadn't heard him at the meeting. He wouldn't authorize extra pay and said I should manage my time better. I tried to explain this wasn't about time management but an emergency that just came up. He only said Monday. Then he walked out with his briefcase. Okay, boss, no problem. I shut down the alert, logged out, and went home. What else could I do? Saturday morning around 10 a.m., my phone rang. It was the security guy who works weekends. He was panicking. He told me water was pouring from the boiler room, flooding the hallway and spreading everywhere. He asked what to do. I laughed. I told him it was too late and joked about swimming. The security guy didn't laugh. He told me there was 2 inches of water across the entire ground floor. I told him to call the boss. I explained that I had warned the boss this would happen, but he didn't allow overtime to fix it. The security guy said the boss wasn't answering his phone. I told him to call emergency plumbers. I mentioned they charge triple on weekends, but we had no choice now. The emergency plumbers came, shut off the water, and did what they could. The damage was done. Monday morning I came in early to see what happened. It was worse than I expected. The ground floor smelled like wet carpet. Water had seeped under doors into offices. Filing cabinets with important documents were soaked. 3 computers sat in puddles. The drywall showed water damage. Around 9 a.m., the boss walked in, stopped, and looked around. His face turned purple. He asked what happened. I shrugged and told him the pipe in the boiler room burst, just as I warned him Friday. He asked why I didn't stop this. I reminded him he told me no overtime and added that the pipe didn't want to wait until Monday. His eye twitched. He asked if I knew how much this would cost to fix. I said probably more than 2 hours of overtime pay. He walked off to call the corporate office. The damage was bad. Cleanup and repairs cost over $20,000. They replaced carpet, drywall, wiring, and 3 computers. Many documents were destroyed or needed restoration. The accounting department lost a week of work. After that, the boss never said no to overtime again. When we reported something might be wrong, he told us to do what we had to do and not tell him the hours. 6 months later, during his review, he took credit for creating a better maintenance system after the plumbing incident. Corporate gave him a bonus for his facility management. That's corporate America. But I got my overtime back. My family moved to a new state when I was 2. We found a dentist 10 minutes from our house. I kept seeing this dentist from age 2 until 18. My whole family went to him. He was nice and got to know us well over the years. One thing I noticed was how he decorated his office with memorabilia from our new state's college football team. Our old state and new state had a big college football rivalry. I was a fan of my old state's team. My dentist supported the local team. He often brought up this rivalry during my checkups. He had a special ritual where he'd play the local team's fight song while working on patients who supported the rival team. For years, his team kept winning. The score differences were often humiliating, with my team losing by 20 or 30 points. He'd tease me about it at every visit. He kept a scoreboard in his office, showing the win-loss record over the decades. I'd tell him our team would win someday, but they never did. My father and I would watch every game together, always hoping for an upset. Then when I was 16, my team finally won the big game. It was unexpected. The local news called it one of the biggest upsets in college football history. I watched it with my family, and we all jumped around the living room when we won. The final score was a nail-biter, with my team winning by just 3 points in the final seconds. My next dental appointment was 2 weeks later. I wore my team's jersey to the appointment, something I'd never had the courage to do before. I walked in ready to brag. The receptionist, who knew about our rivalry, gave me a knowing smile when I arrived, but I noticed my dentist had shaved his head completely. In all my years going there, he always had thick hair, with some gray at the sides. This change surprised me. Several other staff members seemed to be avoiding eye contact with me when I mentioned his new look. I asked what happened to his hair. He said hello and asked about school. He deliberately avoided mentioning the game, which was unusual for him. I pushed about his bold look, wondering if he lost a bet. I was smiling, thinking it might be about the game. All the dental hygienists seemed to be watching our interaction from a distance. He told me I was right. He bet his friends that if our team won, he'd shave his head. We laughed. I felt proud. After years of losing, my dentist had to pay up. The scoreboard in his office had already been updated to reflect our victory. I told him the look worked for him and maybe his team would do better next year. Then his face turned serious. The room suddenly felt colder. He said he was kidding. He had cancer and shaved his head for chemotherapy. My smile disappeared. I felt embarrassed and couldn't look at him. I had just made fun of his appearance while he was facing something so serious. I noticed one of the hygienists turn away, seemingly upset by the conversation. I said sorry and that I didn't know. He asked how I could have known. There was silence. The dental equipment hummed loudly in the quiet room. I wanted to disappear. My mouth stayed open for the exam, but I could barely breathe. I asked if he would be okay. He said they caught it early, but treatment would be tough. He mentioned he might need to take time off work for treatments. He kept examining my teeth while I felt terrible about my comments. I could feel tears welling up in my eyes as he worked. When he finished, I sat up and apologized again. He told me not to worry, then he started smiling. The hygienist who had been watching suddenly broke into a grin too. He admitted he was joking again. He really did lose a bet about the game. I stared at him confused. The receptionist poked her head in and couldn't contain her laughter. I asked what he meant. He explained he was healthy. He just lost a bet with his friends that if our team won, he'd shave his head. The entire office staff had been in on the prank. I felt relief, then embarrassment again. He tricked me. The bet had actually been with his staff, not his friends. I told him that was mean. He said maybe a little, but laughed about my reaction. He'd recorded my reaction to show at their office Christmas party. I told him I really thought he had cancer. He said it was payback for all those years I kept saying our team would win. He pulled out a small trophy from his drawer and handed it to me. It was a miniature version of our rivalry trophy with my name engraved on it. My parents were waiting outside and noticed I looked odd. In the car, I explained what happened. My dad thought it was funny. He admitted he and my dentist had been friends in college despite supporting rival teams. I disagreed. My mom said maybe I'd learn not to comment on how people look. She revealed she had known about the prank ahead of time but was sworn to secrecy. She was right. Even though it was just a prank, that feeling when I thought I'd made fun of someone with cancer stuck with me. It taught me to think before speaking about someone's appearance. The local newspaper actually ran a small story about our dentist's bet and head shaving. We kept up our rivalry over the years. He created a special wall of shame in his office with photos of patients who lost bets related to the football rivalry. I forgave him but reminded him of his prank whenever he talked about football. When I left for college, he gave me a signed photo of himself with his shaved head as a going-away present. Though it upset me then, I now tell this story at parties about how my dentist pretended to have cancer to get back at me because my football team beat his. Years later, when I brought my own kids to him for their checkups, he told them the story from his perspective. The football rivalry continues to this day, and every year around game time he brings up the story to new patients. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.